Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. Want to improve your organization's customer service? Looking for insider tips to knock your customer socks off? Then you're in the right place. Here's your host, Yannick Grant.
Welcome to Navigating the Customer Experience. On today's episode, we have with us a very special guest, and his name is Dan Gingiss. Dan's 20-year career has consistently focused on delighting customers, spanning multiple disciplines including social media, customer service, marketing, and digital customer experience. Dan is the author of the new book, Winning at Social Customer Care: How Top Brands Creating Engaging Experiences on Social Media, which is available on Amazon. He also co-hosts the Experience This podcast, a weekly look at what's working and not working in the world of customer experience. Previously, Dan hosted the Focus on Customer Service podcast, where he interviewed nearly 40 brands which are renowned for outstanding customer service in social media, garnering tips and best practices. The podcast was named one of the 50 best customer retention podcasts to help you attract, engage, and retain customers by NG Data. A frequent conference speaker at conferences such as Social Media Marketing World, Social Shakeup, Corporate Social Media Summit, the Customer Service Summit, the Secret Service Summit, and more, Dan has also been named to several notable industry lists, including the 30 most influential people in social customer service by Conversocial, the top 15 NPS and customer service thought leaders to follow in 2017 by CustomerGauge, just to name a few. Dan has been also responsible for social media, digital marketing, and customer experience at several Fortune 300 brands, including being the Senior Director of Global Social Media at the McDonald's Corporation, Head of Digital Marketing at Humana, and Head of Digital Customer Experience and Social Media at Discover. He played a key role in Discover winning its first J.D. Power Award for highest in customer satisfaction. Dan also holds a BA in Psychology and Communications from the University of Pennsylvania, and he has an MBA in Marketing and Strategy from the Kellogg School of Management at Northwestern University. He resides in Chicago with his family and is an avid Cubs fan. So without further delay, welcome, Dan.
Well, thank you so much for that introduction, and thank you so much for having me on the show.
You're welcome. So Dan, before we actually get into the meat of the podcast, we like to ask our guests, how is it that, you look pretty young, were able to accomplish all of this in such a short, span of time? How did you get into customer experience? What was that catalyst that kind of propelled you into this particular industry and arena?
Well, first of all, thank you. I don't often feel young, but I appreciate the compliment. Well, I've been a marketer for more than 20 years, and the role that really pushed me into customer experience was at Discover Card. I was recruited into a role in the digital team and asked to lead digital customer experience. And it was interesting to me because the guy that recruited me there, who was the chief digital officer, noticed something about me or was able to verbalize something about me that I had not actually figured out about myself yet. And he said that the reason why he wanted me to lead this with very little digital experience on my resume was that I had a unique ability to always be wearing the customer hat in almost every meeting I was in. And so as I thought about that, I was like, yeah, that actually is me. Like, I love to put myself into the customer's shoes and try to be the customer so that I know what it is that I'd like to see or what I'd like to experience, and that helps me to design better experiences. So that was a really fun role for me because my team was leading the website and eventually the mobile app. And just to give you an idea, Discover, which is not even one of the biggest credit cards in the US, gets almost 50 million logins a month on their website. So it is the key way that customers engage with their credit card company. And so there's so many opportunities to improve and develop new experiences as they do that. So that was my role. It also got me into social media. And in social media, as a marketer, the thing that interested me the most was that it's the first and only marketing channel where people can actually talk back to you. So every other marketing channel, the brand gets to have a megaphone and kind of shout its message at people, and people either have to listen or perhaps they can turn off the change the channel, whatever. But this is the first channel where people can talk back. And that was immediately fascinating to me because I knew that companies that engaged with their customers were going to be differentiated. And that in itself was a way to improve the customer experience. So that's kind of how I got into this. And from there, it's just been something that I've been fascinated by. So I've written about it, I've podcasted about it. And it continues to be a topic that I think is absolutely critical for virtually every business out there.
Excellent. So the whole platform of customer experience over the years clearly has changed, as you indicated in your introduction a while ago, where, as you said, before, traditionally, marketers would be using a megaphone and kind of shouting their messages to the customer. A big part of customer experience now, especially with social media, is the customer now has a platform by which they can express their voice. And so testimonials have become such an integral role in terms of customers making decisions. It's no longer what you say the brand is, but it's now what your customers say the experience and the brand experience is like. True?
Absolutely. I mean, we all expect that when we go to a business's website, that website's going to tell us great things about the business, right? Because it's the business speaking. So we're used to that. And that's a good first step to figure out what it is we're getting ourselves into. But with almost any product or service, the very next step is to figure out what other people are saying. And whether that's a ratings and review site or it's looking up the company on Facebook or on Twitter, these are really, really important steps in the buying journey. And so the extent to which companies can ensure that as prospects go through that buying journey, they're hearing good things about their company, or if they're hearing complaints, that they're seeing a company that cares enough to listen to those complaints and respond to them, that's becoming really, really critical. And I think the companies that are figuring it out are the ones that are getting more business because people are taking into consideration, besides price and product, they're taking into consideration the willingness of the company to engage with me if I have a problem as a big part of the decision.
Amazing. So what are some tips for an organization who is now embarking on using social media as a part of their marketing tool or their marketing strategy? Do you think that they can just put up a Facebook page and basically just post things as they feel like and not respond to customers? I mean, when you go on a page, what are some of the key indicators that you should be looking for as a consumer if it is that you're trying to do research on whether or not this company is worthy of your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think when social started, that's exactly what brands did, is they said, hey, this is another way for us to shout our message at the masses. It's a cheap way for us to do that, especially back in the day before it became mostly a paid channel. And I think that they quickly figured out that this was a different kind of channel and that customers were not going to stand around for just hearing marketing messages. I mean, if you think about it, what's amazing about social media is that all the power has shifted from the company to the customer. The customer at any time can unfollow a company or, just not pay attention to it anymore. And as we all know, when we look at our streams in Facebook and Twitter, we're seeing a lot of content. So it's very easy for us to just scroll past it if it's something we're not interested in. But I do think that more and more customers, as they're evaluating companies they want to do business with, are looking at their social presence to make sure that it isn't just marketing and to make sure that when people do bring questions or complaints to their attention, that company is engaging back. It is a new world in which consumers want to have a relationship with companies, and that relationship is two-way, and it involves being able to have a conversation with a brand when I want to and where I want to. And so looking on the Twitter feed or the Facebook feed to make sure that a company is willing to do that, as I said, I believe is becoming more and more part of the decision-making process.
Powerful stuff, Dan. Now, one of the things that my customers sometimes ask me, and as an expert in social media customer care, I would love to hear your feedback on it. So typically, what do you think is the global standard, or do you think it should be a standard based on the industry that you are in? If you post a complaint or a comment on someone's social media page, what is a standard time within which they should get back in touch with you? Is it immediately? And when we say immediately, what do we define that as? 24 hours, an hour, 30 minutes?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I would say that it does differ slightly by industry, but let me come back to that in a second. I would say that best in class is 15 minutes or less. I don't think that people expect instant yet, unless they're on a channel like a live chat, obviously. Mm-hmm. But I think 15 minutes or less is considered best in class. Now, there's some caveats to that. If you are an international airline that operates 24 hours a day, the expectation is that you are available 24 hours and that you're responding quickly, because your customers might be stranded in an airport having just missed a flight and they cannot wait for a response. If you are a mom and pop retail store that has one location that's open from 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day, there's probably not as much expectation that you are responding 24/7. And to that kind of a company, I would advise that as long as you are upfront with your customers about when you're available and you set expectations properly, it's absolutely fine for you not to be available all the time. The challenge is that more and more consumers are evaluating every company they do business with in comparison to every other company they do business with. So if you are a restaurant, you're not necessarily being compared to another restaurant. You're being compared to Amazon or Sprint or Comcast or whatever company I just had a really great experience with on social media and who answered my question in 15 minutes or less. So that's the challenge, is that you don't get to say, well, I'm just a small restaurant, and so my customers' expectations aren't as high, because unfortunately you're being compared to all those other companies. Now, the good news is those other companies are also being compared to you. So when I go into a restaurant and I have a really nice waiter or waitress and the food is delicious and the overall atmosphere and experience are fantastic, the next day when I walk into the Sprint store or some other place, I am comparing that experience to what I just had at the restaurant. So I think that the short answer to your question is I have always tried at the companies I've been at to aim for 15 minutes or less. I think that is best in class across all industries. But certainly, depending on the size of your company, the size of your customer base, and your hours of operation, I do think that there's flexibility there.
Excellent. Good. So that's a good base to start from. What are some of the main things you have noticed over the years being in customer care and social media? Why do you think people tend to flock to social media? Do you think they flock there mostly for negative comments or mostly for positive comments?
That's a great question. My belief is, and I have an easy equation that I have in my book. And for those of you who don't like math, don't worry, you're not going to be overwhelmed here. The equation is that expectations plus emotions equals a willingness to share. And let me explain how that works. When companies exceed customer expectations, we make them happy. And unfortunately today, they're still surprised at that because companies don't exceed expectations very often. And when we have a great experience, we are more than willing as customers to share that publicly, right? Because it is still a unique thing to have a great experience.
True.
Now, when companies only meet expectations or barely meet expectations, you create an emotion that's really, blah, nothing. And an okay experience, there's no reason to share that. Why would anybody want to tell their friends about an okay experience? But when companies miss expectations, we make customers sad or worse, angry. And unfortunately, there's a very high willingness to share there as well. So my advice to companies is to make sure that your positive experiences outweigh your negative experiences. And you will have more positive sentiment on social media than negative because your fans will be louder. Your lovers will be louder than your haters. And that's hard to do because especially as your business gets bigger. You are going to make mistakes. You are going to miss customer expectations. But even then, you have such an opportunity in a public space like social media to show that you care, to show that you have empathy, and to make it right, that there's countless occasions where I've seen companies turn, negative detractors into positive advocates just because they are responsive and willing to help.
Amazing. That's so true. So you mentioned one very important word that I think is critical to achieving customer experience and building loyalty, and that's empathy. And I just wanted to know if you could just share with us, what are your views on empathy and why is it even necessary in a customer service environment, regardless of the industry that you're in?
Well, it goes back to what I was describing to you before, this ability to step into the customer's shoes. I think that very often companies create products and services, and even worse, processes that they haven't actually, as consumers, gone through themselves. So they make a lot of sense to the company. But as a consumer, you're stuck going through a process that is difficult or time consuming or doesn't make sense. And when you have a complaint, what you want is somebody to listen to you and to believe your complaint and to be willing to help. And all of that kind of gets wrapped up into empathy. And the best customer service agents are the ones that are able to step into a customer's shoes, understand that they're frustrated, and be willing to try to help them. So, when people ask me, what kind of people you look for in social customer care, I always say you want to look for the customer service qualities first, among which empathy is one of the top things to look for, because you can teach almost anybody how to do social media. It's very difficult to teach empathy, and it's very difficult to teach someone to be great at customer service, to want to solve customer problems, to be willing to listen, to be willing to remain objective and not get emotional when a customer is upset. These are things that are really tough to teach, and they're kind of innate in people. But when you find those people that are good at that, you can teach them Twitter and Facebook. That's pretty easy. But yeah, I believe that empathy is one of those things that customers are looking for when they're frustrated. And when they find it, it eases their frustration, and again, can make them actually turn a negative experience into a positive one.
Amazing. That is so true. Basically, what you're saying then is you take the same approach that you would take to employ someone that you are putting face to face in front of your customer with the right attitude, and then you can teach them the technical skills. But that same characteristic that you're looking for in that individual, that's who you're going to put in front of your social media as well.
For sure. And remember that when you've got people answering in social media, they are the face of your brand. I mean, this is why the other thing I advise for social agents in particular is to make sure that they're good writers, which is something that you don't need necessarily in a phone agent. But when you see companies responding to customers and their spelling and grammar errors, that's a reflection on the company.
True.
And so the people that you select for this really important role, they've got to be good writers. They have to be able to show empathy and patience and caring and a willingness to solve problems, because all of that is reflective of your brand.
Amazing. Yep. I love it. So the book actually covers a lot of the areas that you speak to, right? I'm going to encourage our listeners that are going to have the opportunity to listen to this podcast. This book was actually written by Dan, and it was also written by, you have a author, Jay Bear, correct?
Jay Bear wrote the foreword to the book.
Okay, great. So Jay wrote the foreword to the book, and Jay was a past guest on our podcast a couple months back. So you can always archive one of those podcast episodes and listen to Jay. But it's important that I just wanted to emphasize to our listeners that this is an awesome book. It focuses on a lot of areas that, questions that Dan may not be able to fully answer in this podcast. He's only touching on, little areas, but he goes deeper in the actual book, Winning at Social Customer Care. So I would encourage all of you that have the opportunity to listen to this episode to head on over to Amazon and purchase this book, because this could be your winning tool for 2018.
Thank you.
You're welcome. How do you stay motivated every day?
I stay motivated because I think that customer experience is still in its infancy. I think we've been talking about it now for a couple of years as being important. And you see all the surveys that say that CEOs and CMOs know that it's a key thing to focus on. But I still think we're not quite at the point where customer experience is going. And I think that it will be the last true differentiator among brands. I think that the industries that compete on price find out very quickly that that's a very tough way to make money. And we know that most products and services can be copied in some way. And so the real distinction that companies have is the way they treat their customers. And that is very difficult to copy because it is made up usually of human interactions. And so if we talked before about hiring the right people and having the right front line, that's very difficult to copy. And so that's what motivates me, because I look around and, my podcast is all about great experiences that my co-host and I have had with different companies, or that our listeners have had with different companies. But it is amazing just waking up every day and living your life and interacting with brands. It is amazing how few of those there still are. As often as we've been talking about customer experience, and you have this great podcast and other people are talking about it, it is amazing still how many companies don't get it or aren't executing on it. And so to me, that just means opportunity. And I think that it's, a day is coming where all companies are going to have to prioritize it. And that'll be exciting because as customers, I think that is going to make our lives a lot easier.
True. That's very true. And, it's interesting you say that, because I think every day we are all customers, regardless of the businesses that we interface with or the lives that we lead. But a lot of the challenges that we face, I think, in life that contribute to our stress level being high, which leads to chronic illnesses, it really boils down to the interactions and the relationships that we have with people. And a lot of it boils down to the service experiences that we have, how we treat each other, how we respond to each other. And I think, as you said before, if all of us can if more organizations could make an effort to understand how important this is to their business, it would actually improve the quality of life, not just in the business, but generally how we relate to each other in the world. I think it would improve the world overall.
Absolutely. I agree with that. And, you said you had Jay on a previous podcast, and Jay wrote a terrific book called Hug Your Haters. And one of the key takeaways there that I love is that people who complain about your company complain because they care, right? The ones we need to be worried about are the ones that have already picked up and moved to our competition. But the ones that are complaining actually care about our brand and want us to be better. And again, there's a sort of a human nature to that if we're just willing to listen and hear out a customer that has a complaint, more often than not, I think we're going to realize that complaint's valid, and that customer might actually be suggesting ways for our experience to be even better. And as long as we're open-minded about that, we shouldn't be afraid of complaints. In fact, we should welcome them because it's feedback, and feedback's a gift, whether you are a company or an individual. Getting honest feedback is a real gift, and it's what we do with it that matters. And I totally agree with you that if we had fewer bad experiences with companies, we'd probably all be happier as a population.
Oh, yes. I totally agree. Totally agree. All right. Now, could you tell us what's the one online resource, tool, website, or app that you absolutely couldn't live without in your business?
That's a great one. I'm going to probably choose an obvious one and go with Twitter. And the reason is, as much as Twitter has struggled as a public company, I do think that Twitter is still the place to listen to what your customers are saying about both you and your competition. And companies that are not paying attention on Twitter to the conversation about your industry, about your company or your competitors are just missing so much rich data that can help you improve your business, I think, on two angles. and both of which I talk about in the book. One is identifying the pain points that your customers are having with you and fixing them. It's one thing to respond within 15 minutes and help that individual customer, but you need to take it to the next level and actually fix the underlying problem so that you don't have repeat complaints. That actually will end up saving you money because your customer service expenses will go down. The other thing, though, is that there's so much opportunity to grow your business with new products and new innovations that are suggested by your customers. One of my favorite examples is the company OtterBox, which makes cases for mobile phones. And just from listening on Twitter, they figured out that a lot of their customers were bringing their phones into the shower, of all places, in order to listen to music. And this was a use case that they had not considered previously. So they took this information and the data and they brought it back to their R&D team, and they ended up creating their first ever waterproof case, which turned out to be one of their best sellers. And that doesn't happen if they're not listening to the conversation on Twitter. So to me, that is the absolute must-have. And if you're not paying attention, get onto Twitter. You don't even have to tweet if you don't want to. You just have to create some lists, follow some people, and listen to what's going on, to what the conversation is about, and you will learn a ton.
Wow, that's amazing. And I'm actually an OtterBox user. So to know that, I didn't know they had a waterproof case now. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing that. I think listening, as you said, is so important. And as you mentioned before, it's not just about going on Twitter and hearing the information or looking at what's there, but actually using that information, as you said, providing it to the people in the business that can actually do something with that information. So it's good that they listened, they took it back, and the team actually did something by creating a product that the customers actually wanted. Because a lot of times in a business, your customers are telling you what they want. It's just if you're really listening to what they want, or are you just giving them what you think they want?
Exactly. Couldn't have said it better myself.
All right, Dan, could you share with us what are some of the books that have had the biggest impact on you?
Yeah, I would go with two of them. And one, I'm going to bring back our friend Jay Baer. Hug Your Haters was a book that I think was a real turning point because Jay, for most of his career, had been a marketing expert. And in fact, Utility, his earlier book, is also one of my favorite books. And he shifted over to the customer service realm. And I look at Hug Your Haters as, and he actually sort of wrote this in the foreword to my book, is that Hug Your Haters really outlines the why of why it is that we have to engage with customers in social media and in all other channels. And then, my book tried to be a follow-on to kind of say, here's the how in the social media space specifically. But I think Hug Your Haters is an absolute must read. He's got great examples from lots of different companies in there. And then another book that I'm a huge fan of is called They Ask You Answer by Marcus Sheridan, who is a wonderful guy. Marcus is the single best speaker I've ever seen in public at a conference. And his book really talks to making sure that your company is the source of the best information about your product, service, industry anywhere on the planet. And he tells a wonderful story about his own company, which was a swimming pool installation company, and how he turned his website into the #1 swimming pool website in the world in terms of people asking questions about installing swimming pools into their backyards. And, his company is just this little company on the East Coast of the U.S. It doesn't even service the world, but it has become the go-to resource. And so I think that book is really important because it shows the overlap between marketing and customer service. And I think that there is a huge overlap there. He talks a lot about the sales process and how having all of this information will draw in prospects, but it also can be used from a servicing perspective, because the more we can get our customers to self-serve with great content, the less they have to call us and frankly, create expense in a call center. And so I think that book is a terrific one as well that I would highly recommend.
Awesome. So that's They Ask You Answer, a revolutionary approach to inbound sales, content marketing, and today's digital consumer by Marcus Sheridan, and Jay Baer's Hug Your Haters, right?
You got it.
Amazing. I like the fact that you linked marketing and customer experience, because I personally think that there are a lot of organizations that they have these departments and the departments aren't even speaking to each other. So they're all doing their own thing, but they're operating in silos. And I'm not sure if marketing has recognized that what they're doing connects directly to what the customer is experiencing. And of course, whatever it is that the customer is experiencing needs to filter back into what marketing is doing on their end to ensure that they're actually meeting the customer's needs. I just think that's so powerful. And to me, that's like a BFO, like a blinding flash of the obvious, that I think a lot of organizations, that light bulb has not gone off in their business as yet, for them to recognize that those departments really should be working in tandem with each other.
I love that. I've never heard of BFO before, but I think that's terrific. That's absolutely true. And I mean, how many of us have gone on to a website and been greeted with an obnoxious pop-up ad from the marketing department, right? The problem is those ads tend to work, which is why companies do it, but they work at the expense of annoying the 90% of customers that don't click on it. And so that's frustrating. And I do think that marketers have to be way more aware of the overall customer experience and their contribution to the customer experience than they are today. So I believe that silo busting is going to continue to be a theme in 2018 with companies that the ones that are figuring out how to get these silos integrated with each other instead of separate, I think are going to make great strides towards improving the entire customer journey.
Amazing. All right. Now, Dan, can you share with us what's one thing that's going on in your life right now that you're really excited about? Either something that you're working on to develop yourself or your people?
That's a great question. I right now am really kind of thinking about what's next for me in my career, and am looking at, whether I want to continue speaking and writing and kind of making a go at it independently, or whether I want to continue working at big companies. I've sort of had this rare combination over the last few years, because most of the folks that are speaking and podcasting and writing books are doing it, independently, or they run their own consultancies. Versus working for big brands. I've been trying to do both for a while, and I'm really trying to kind of think inward now and figure out what makes me happiest and what I want to do next. So that's probably what's on my mind right now, and as we turn into 2018, and I'm excited for whatever lies in the future.
All right, sounds good. Now, let's say our listeners listen to this podcast. They've researched your book. They said, oh my goodness, this guy is amazing. I really want to stay in contact with him. I need to connect with him. Where can they find you online?
Well, I hope they have that reaction. That would be really
They will.
Fantastic. So you can definitely hit me up on Twitter. I'm very active there. Gingiss. It's DGINGISS. LinkedIn, I am at Dan Gingiss. And if you connect to me and tell me that you heard me on this podcast, I'll be happy to connect back. And then my website is called Winning at Social. It's www.winningatsocial.com. And that will give you information about the book, links to both of the podcasts. I've got a blog on there as well. And you definitely can connect with me there. So looking forward to connecting with your listeners, and I really appreciate you having me on today.
Great. That's awesome. All right. So right before we wrap up, we always like to ask our guests if you have a quote or a saying that during times of adversity or challenge, this is kind of a quote or a saying that you would revert to kind of just help you keep refocused, to remind you of what your purpose is in life. Do you have one of those?
Well, I would probably lean on one that I talk about in the book quite a bit. And when you introduced me, you mentioned that I'm an avid Cubs fan. And the manager of the Chicago Cubs is named Joe Madden. And Joe has all of these great sayings and great quotes that are meant to be about baseball. But I actually think that when Joe retires from baseball, he's going to become a business consultant, because almost everything he teaches his players is very applicable to business. And my favorite one of his is do simple better. And I love that because, first of all, it in itself is very simple. It's 3 words. But I think that it is when he's talking about baseball, he's talking about making sure that you always run out of play, or, that the simple ground ball to the shortstop, that those are not the ones you make errors on. But in real life and in business, it's such a good mantra to live by, because so many companies make things overly complicated for customers. And if you can figure out how to do simple better, generally you're going to get to a much better outcome for both the customer and the business. So as I'm struggling, when I struggle at work with some sort of complexity, or the legal department wants this, or government regulation wants this, or the PR department is asking for something, again, it's about putting that customer hat on and saying, well, what's the simplest route for our customer? How do we make it as simple as possible and do simple better? And there's some great examples in the book and elsewhere about this. One quick one that I'll give you is, that's one of my favorites, is I talk about in the book about this company that does conference call servicing. And we've all been on conference calls where we're waiting on hold and we listen to this awful music. And this one particular company hired a guy who actually now works for Facebook to record a song with his guitar called I'm on Hold. And I would encourage your listeners to go to YouTube and look up I'm on Hold by Alex Cornell. And this song is absolutely amazing. And as you're listening to the song, it's just this nice guy, strumming a guitar and a singer-songwriter. You find yourself realizing that you don't want the person on the other line to actually join the call, because you want to listen to the music instead. And that is doing simple better. That's taking a very simple experience of waiting on hold and making it memorable and remarkable instead of either annoying or unremarkable. So I think that when companies can find opportunities to do that at every step of the journey, you really make things much better for your customers, and you can really change the whole perception of dealing with you as a company.
True. So true. Amazing. Do simple better. And even though it's just, as you said, 3 basic words, it's not so much the words, but it's the meaning and the purpose that is in the depth of those words that you really should extrapolate and try to inject into the DNA of your employees so that they can really function from that mindset. Because you're right. Sometimes things are very, very simple, and we find the most complicated and complex routes to frustrate the poor customers who kind of want to just get in and out in the shortest possible time, whether it be online, face to face, over the phone. It's just a simple question I need answered. And somehow it's just a very combobulated way that the organization has put in place for this. So if we could really start with that in mind, do simple better, I think it would definitely improve the quality of all of our lives.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So a baseball quote that's transcended into business. Love it. Love it. Absolutely love it. Dan, I had a great time. Did you enjoy yourself?
I did. Thank you so much. It was definitely fun, and loved your questions, loved the conversation, and thanks again.
Thank you so much for being our guest on Navigating the Customer Experience. Until next time, I'm your host, Yannick Grant. We really appreciate your support of this podcast. Are you ready to grow your business even more? Or improve your leadership skills? Or train your team members in the art of customer service? Give us a call at 305-848-0815 or visit our website at www.yannickgrant.com. That's YANNIQUEGRANT.com. Remember, 305-848-0815 or visit our website at yannickgrant.com. Our new online course, Mastering Customer Experience and Increasing Your Revenue, is now available. The link for this will be on the show notes of each episode starting September 7, 2016. The first 2 modules are free, so hop on over, have a look, and take the steps to increase your revenue.
Thanks for listening. For more awesome resources to take your customer service game to another level, head over to navigatingthecustomerexperience.com. See you next time.